Chapter 201. John the Burning Man. Boom! The terrifying flame instantly bombarded and completely collapsed the building at the corner of the factory. The terrifying flame reflected the night sky, bursting out an undeniably huge impact. Inside the factory, everyone's eyes were on that side. Under the light of the fire all over the sky, several figures of different heights slowly emerged. When seeing this group of people, everyone pulled out their weapons and aimed at them, while the young man next to Jinbin, who released the flames with his bare hands, tilted his head. His rebellious face was full of disdain. Is this the so-called Defenders Alliance? That's right, it's them. I just didn't expect that you would be so stupid and came to the door at a time when you shouldn't have come. Jin stared at Daredevil in front of him in a tight red combat uniform. The Defenders Alliance led by Daredevil fought against him during that period of time, which caused him a lot of losses. Many businesses were disrupted because of these bastards. Jin used his wealth of billions to attract a large number of superpowers and mutants. These people became his most capable subordinates. So much so that it once had the upper hand when fighting the defenders. He even hid around like a sewer mouse in a mess after being beaten by him. After that, these stupid and self-righteous guys began to change their tactics, becoming more careful, and their shooting speed became more precise and faster. Not being a reckless defender gave him a headache. But I didn't expect these idiots today. After he brought all his men, the other party would come over directly like this. To be honest, Jin didn't arrange secret sentry and manpower around the periphery. In a way, he just wanted to see these idiots will the brain cramps come to find myself. Originally, he thought that the other party would not be so stupid. But it was obvious that he underestimated the opponent's brain. But Jin is not very happy, because today can get rid of these bugs. Kill them. Jin didn't talk too much nonsense, and directly issued a kill order. Boom! In the next second, as Jinbin's voice fell, all kinds of elemental forces, such as flames, thunder, and lightning, small fireballs, icicles, etc., all smashed towards the alliance of defenders. Daredevil and the others felt their scalps tingle when they saw this situation. Immediately instinctively wanted to dodge. It's just that I don't know what I thought of, but I still forcibly stopped my body, and just looked at it calmly. Jinbing and the middle-aged man who made the deal unconsciously frowned at this behavior. Why are they not afraid? Where does the confidence come from? However, the next scene let Jinbing and the middle-aged man know what Daredevil and others' confidence is. It was seen in a pair of focused eyes. The flames all over the sky, and all the energy of the lightning ball seemed to be manipulated by some terrifying power, and it was just frozen in midair. Thunder, lightning, flames, and frosty light and shadow interweave in midair, just like the beautiful pictures rendered by the pen and ink of handed-down painters, dazzling people. Such a beautiful picture, but it brings people palpitations and terrible pressure. Smiley face. This is impossible. John, who can manipulate flames, has disbelief on his unruly face at this time. His power is full of destructive power. He believes that once he really grows up, he can even easily destroy a city. Adding the original flame gene made him grumpy. Even if he became Jinbing's subordinate, it didn't mean that he completely surrendered to the other party. It was only the other party's money, power, and some charisma that barely suppressed him. But his pride was abruptly broken at this moment. However, John didn't know what sounded, and his pupils shrank suddenly. Could it be? A trace of uneasiness suddenly surged in his heart. Sure enough, in front of him, the flames, ice, and frost all over the sky suddenly seemed to have life, and they turned into fluids, and gathered together, and then in the shocking eyes of everyone, they converged into a star. The colorful light finally turned into a wisp of blue smoke and floated in the air. Such ability, such control. All of a sudden it reminded John of someone. Damn! John lowered his head and gritted his teeth. Seeing John's appearance, Jin frowned. John, you. However, before he could finish speaking, there was a loud bang, and a terrifying thunder and lightning flashed across the night sky. The next moment, there were waves of footsteps in everyone's ears. Jinbin and the others instinctively looked in the direction of their footsteps vigilantly, and saw a group of figures slowly walking in from the dark night outside the factory. They are of different heights, male and female. But everyone is wearing a uniform, black tight-fitting combat uniform, and their temperament is very sturdy. And the lead is a woman, a very beautiful woman with red hair. She was dressed a little differently from the others. She was wearing a black windbreaker and high boots, and every step she took was full of strength. Although she didn't show any strength, she was like a terrifying god. Even the heavens and the earth, everyone is afraid of her. No power was leaked. But it was just a suppressed look, and everyone present dared not move at all. Even Jinbing, who was a hero, did not dare to move. This woman is the underground emperor. Jinbin immediately thought of the identity of the woman in front of him. Except for him, the same is true for that middle-aged man. The pupils of the two were full of shock. Phoenix Girl Grey Chin, Jinbin shouted in a low voice. That's right, it was the X-Men who came here, and the leader was Phoenix Nukin. And this is also the confidence of the defenders. Tread Chin led the X-Men and stopped about 10 meters away from Jinbing, with his hands in the pockets of his windbreaker. At this time, his whole demeanor had an inexplicable sternness and majesty, ignoring the underground boss Jinbing and the middle-aged man, looking directly at John. His eyes were full of disappointment. Perhaps you should be able to give me an explanation, John. I. Facing Chin's eyes at this moment, the oppressive force is enough to make people's spirits collapse. Even John, who is as rebellious as John, can't bear it, and he stammers when he speaks. Jean and the rest of the X-Men had nothing to say, just looked at him. The rest of the people did not dare to breathe. Chapter 202. Hopeless jealousy. The flames not far away made a crackling sound. Under the light of the flames, there appeared the fearful figures who were sluggish in place. John felt chills all over his body, as if he couldn't feel the slightest bit of temperature. Cold sweat kept dripping from his forehead, and his heart was filled with horror. If it was Teacher Chin in the past, she would not have brought him such a great pressure at all, but the current Teacher Chin is different. At this time, she is full of majesty. Although she is still gentle with the students, her own hidden powerful energy made John keenly aware of it. There is always a feeling in the dark that facing Chin, he will really die. Teacher, the more nervous he was, the more unable to speak, so that his face became extremely pale. Everyone present was silent. Wolverine Logan, Cyclops Scott, and Storm just watched like this, and the new X-Men members beside them, such as Phantom Cat and Colossus, were the faces. It's full of complexity. Especially Bobby the Iceman, who was originally John's good friend, hesitated to speak. It was obvious that what John had done broke their hearts, not just the teacher. Betrayal is something that can never be forgiven. This is especially true of John. John, if you don't want to stay in the academy, no one will force you, that's your freedom, and I won't interfere, but... Speaking of this, Jean's face became cold, and a breath of terror gradually spread, and doubled the pressure on everyone. John's face became even paler. For some profit, you were able to betray the companions you had been with day and night, and sold those two children to those people as test subjects. Don't you know how cruelly those two children will be treated on the test bench? If we were one step slower before, those two children would have been cut up and tested in pain because of you. Speaking of this, Jean could hardly restrain the anger in her heart. Boom! In an instant, the entire factory was shaken, and so was the surrounding ground thousands of meters away, and the ground under Jean's feet was cracked, and dense cracks spread everywhere. The influx of terrifying and monstrous energy made the entire air faintly blurred and faintly distorted. At this time, Jean is like the supreme who controls the life and death of all living beings. Facing those eyes full of anger, no one dared to look directly at them. They instinctively just wanted to kneel down and beg for forgiveness. John's whole body was even more unbearable. He was guilty enough, and under the influence of Jean's powerful strength, his whole body seemed to lose strength, but he knew that he must not give up, because once he gave up, he would never there would be no hope of life. So, he staggered back a few steps, and begged, "Teacher, I was wrong, I was just bewitched by that group of people, and I regretted it later, but when I turned around at that time, I couldn't find them." He tried to use words to dispel Jean's killing intent, making Jean feel soft-hearted and let him go. But John has forgotten that Jean is no longer the same as before. Trying her best to deal with the dark personality, coupled with the changes in strength, her personality has already undergone some changes. If it was before, Jean might still be soft-hearted. But now, facing John's hoarse begging, she was not moved in the slightest. Seeing that Jean's eyes became more and more murderous, and John became more and more desperate, he knew that he might die today. But he is not reconciled, he still has a broader future, he still has more room for growth, he should have more time to enjoy this wonderful world, he is a mutant who manipulates flames. Roar desperation to the extreme is complete absolute madness. John abandoned everything in desperation. He grinned grinningly, bursting out with all his potential and strength. I saw the ignition device on the wrist ignited, and John manipulated his ability to instantly magnify the flame countless times. In an instant, monstrous flames burst out from his body, and the sea of flames poured in all directions. In an instant, everyone was about to be swallowed by the sea of flames. John actually included everyone in the attack range, and he wanted to kill everyone here. No one can't help being shocked and surprised by this terrifying power and destructive power. However, such power, to Jean, is as ridiculous as a small flame. She raised her hand and shook it lightly. In an instant, the space of the entire factory seemed to be reversed in time, and the originally pouring sea of flames began to shrink and be retracted. What's even more frightening is that under John's terrified eyes, it turned into a crimson bead that looked like a pigeon egg laughing. Just floating quietly in front of John. Quiet, but lurking in dire danger. Teacher, desire and hatred have eroded your soul, John, you are not worthy of death, I just wanted to abolish your ability, but what I see in your eyes is not repentance, but hatred, you are hating I hate everyone in the academy. JYN stared into John's eyes. Zero, she shook her head, this kind of hatred makes you want to take revenge on the school after you plan to escape. She is like a who can see into the soul, seeing through John's dirty heart. The latter's face was bloodless, and he was so pale that he had nothing to say. He is completely desperate, and he knows that he is dead, and he is no longer hiding himself. His hatred and those venomous eyes made people shudder. John Bobby, who used to be John's best friend, looked at him in disbelief. He had no idea that the boy who was a bit grumpy was actually the one who wanted to kill them now. What exactly changed him? Poppy couldn't figure it out at all. And Storm, who wanted to ask for love, also closed her mouth and stopped talking. She knew that this child was already crazy, and even if his ability was abolished, the other party might cause harm to other innocent ordinary people. Jean shook her head, there is no cure. Boom. The crimson light in his eyes flashed past, and he saw that the floating pillar exploded in an instant, and the terrifying flames instantly engulfed John. End. Chapter 203. Crazy Jinbin. He was able to manipulate flames, but he died under the flames, and his body was burned to ashes by the flames. What an irony. Everyone in the factory was quiet, watching the red fire gradually go out. Oh, the X-Men all sighed. They didn't know why John became like this, and they didn't want to see their original companion die in front of them. But, no matter how you don't want to, the reality is so cruel. If he simply escaped from the academy, he would not be guilty of death, but the last thing John should do is to betray his companions for his own selfish desires, betray them to those organizations, and put them on the test bed. Such a person, whose soul is already dirty, is an absolute unforgivable sin. If Jean was soft-hearted for a moment and let 837 pass John, then the members who originally joined the college fraternity would cause a new round of turmoil. Finish John. Jean set her eyes on Jinbing and the others again. Jean's eyes were not particularly aggressive, but they had a terrifying deterrent power. Even Jin, who is the underground emperor, and the middle-aged man with mysterious forces felt a chill down his spine. This is the pressure brought by the strong. Damn it, how did you come across these monsters? It's bad luck. And that damned John, even with such a powerful teacher, he dared to betray his companion. Isn't that courting death? What a supercilious idiot. Jinbing and the middle-aged man couldn't help cursing inwardly. It can be said that they suffered purely from an unwarranted disaster this time. This time, if it weren't for John, the X-Men would have ignored them at all, and would not have come here at all. Now, they are completely passive. Life and death are all in the mind of the X-Men. Fortunately, Qin was not interested in Jinbing and middle-aged men at all. Smiley face. For Qin, no matter if it was the underworld or someone else, as long as the mutant group was not involved, she would not deliberately intervene. Today's X-Men joined the Avengers squad. So a big part of that is just being low-key. As far as Qin is concerned, she is too lazy to argue with a gang of gangsters, but the things these people traded caught Qin's heart. She set her eyes on the metal briefcase under Jinbing's hand. Wave lightly. Ong invisible power spread out in an instant, driven by majestic spiritual energy, the briefcase under Jinbing floated leisurely, and the energy of the Phoenix Force eroded the briefcase with a hard shell in an instant. It turned into tiny metal particles and slowly drifted away with the wind. Inside the briefcase, a few pieces of metal were floating like this. When she saw these metal fragments, Qin's eyes moved slightly, and she looked at Jinbing and the middle-aged man. The powerful spiritual power instantly invaded the minds of the two, and without the latter's knowledge, they understood all the ins and outs. It's crystal clear. What are these? It looks interesting. Logan has a beast-like perception, and he can feel that there seems to be an unknown force on the metal fragments that makes him feel afraid. Why does it look familiar to me? Iceman Bobby stroked his chin and looked at it carefully. Jinbin, what the are you doing? The defenders came over, and Daredevil glanced at the metal fragments floating in midair, then turned to look at Jinbin, frowning and questioning. Jinbin snorted coldly and didn't talk at all. Just when the grumpy Jessica was about to give Jinbing a good punch, she heard Qin's slightly magnetic voice. I didn't expect you to be able to find the fragments of the holy clothes. Your organization has a lot of energy. Boom. As soon as Qin's words came out, the faces of everyone present except Jinbing and the middle-aged man who knew nothing about it suddenly changed. Everyone looked at the metal fragments in disbelief. Looking closely, the metal fragments on the bronze and silver do seem to have some mysterious lines carved on them that humans can't understand at all, but I didn't expect these mysterious metal fragments to come from the holy clothes. I buy karma, Jessica murmured in a low voice, then suddenly looked at Jinbing and the middle-aged man. Her face was full of expressions that you are all crazy. At this moment, she just felt a little unbelievable. Are you all crazy? How dare you search for the pieces of the holy clothes in such a vain way? What are you going to do? Even if Jessica is stupid, she knows that Jinbing spent a lot of money to buy this piece of holy clothing, and it is definitely not for taking home as an ornamental cultural relic. What's more, before she joined the Defenders, she was a private detective, even if she is usually a private detective. Looks like a drunk. But thinking is pretty fast. Naturally, he could guess what Jinbin was thinking. That's why she showed that expression. Iron Fist frowned, staring intently at Jinbin. You are looking for death, spying on the path of the gods, and you will undoubtedly kill yourself. It's impossible for you not to know this truth. What exactly do you want to do, Jinbin? For a moment, except for the crackling sound of the flame burning in the corner, the atmosphere of the whole factory became extremely quiet, and only the gasps of people could be heard. Finally, Jinbin was still the same Jinbin, and he suppressed the fear in his heart at this time and despair, the fat face gradually ferocious. He laughed wildly, and his thick laughter broke the silence. Ha 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 ha, what am I going to do? 5.0 Yes, I am indeed going to do the craziest thing. Do what you think in your heart. You think I am a lunatic. I am indeed a lunatic, but tell me, who of you does not want to crack the secret of becoming a god, that one who is high above you, the supreme god? She descended to the earth with a power beyond human comprehension. Even when she created the gods' guards, she just selected a few weak human children from the earth. In just a few years, those children possess the power to destroy the world. It's so beautiful, and it makes people yearn for it. However, this idea is not only me, but also those in power, but they dare not. Chapter 204. Touching the power of God. Which one of them doesn't want to be a god? Which one doesn't want to have eternal life? This is the greed in the human heart and desire. Jin looked around and swept past everyone, including Jean and the X-Men. He raised his finger, pointed at Storm and the others, and said softly, you know? Although mutants are a group hated and guarded by humans, who doesn't want to be you? You have the power that is almost chosen by God. Although it is not as good as those holy warriors, in a sense, it may also grow to slightly counter their existence. Although it is not stated explicitly, it is obviously referring to Qin, who once fought the Phoenix Saint. It was also that battle that completely established Qin's title as the strongest mutant. Ordinary human beings are different. Their bodies are extremely fragile. Even the athletes, who are the best in human physical fitness, will still be attacked by viruses, bullets, or even cars. Any tiny accidental factor would create death. There is no one who is not afraid of death. So you want to do everything possible to find the fragments of the Holy 16 clothes, trying to crack the source of the power of God? Are you underestimating the gods, Jinbin? Daredevil said in a low tone, if the power of God can be easily if it is cracked, then this should not be called a god. If A is studied by a human like this, then the power of A is nothing more than that, and the power that can be mastered by a human should not be called a god. It's technology. If this is the case, then the Earth civilization is not just what it is now. There is actually an invasion of evil gods from extraterritorial dimensions. Do they have the guts? It's not bad if you don't get counterattacked by mad scientists. Jin did not refute Daredevil's words. Indeed, I know the power of God, and it is impossible not to study it so easily. But you still did it, even at the risk of the wrath of the gods. Daredevil's face was extremely ugly. Do you know what kind of danger your actions will bring to New York? No one can know how much of their power is still hidden. If there was power like that, if it were unleashed, millions of people in New York would probably die from it. He didn't think highly of the Saint fighters, but thought he looked down upon them. You must know that the holy clothes were created by the supreme god's mansion. If the saint cloths inherited by the saints have no power, who would believe it? Even a sliver, New York would be at great risk. Thinking of that possibility, Daredevil and the others couldn't help trembling in their hearts, and their eyes were already full of anger when they looked at Jinbing. I know that too. Facing those angry eyes, Jin nodded frankly, but I don't care about this risk at all. Jinbin. Luke's roar resounded throughout the factory. He was panting like an angry bull. At this moment, he wished he could swallow Jinbin alive right now. But it's not just a person, he also has relatives and friends. It is because of Jinbing's selfish desires that he may put his relatives and friends in danger anytime and anywhere. He couldn't help but vent his anger. Fortunately, Daredevil, who is still reasonable, stretched out his hand to block Jinbin. Jinbin will definitely be punished, but not now, there are still many things that need to be understood clearly. Moreover, to put it bluntly, the initiative right now does not belong to him at all. It's here with Jean and the X-Men. If Jean and the X-Men don't plan to intervene, then the Defenders can't deal with Jinbin, or even his super mutant men. Jin didn't care about those eyes that wanted to eat him alive, he said to himself, his eyes seemed to be caught in memories. You know? A long time ago, I didn't want to be the boss of an underground gang. I also have my own family, I have a lover, and I have the crystallization of love. He is very young and a very good little guy. Lover and family, I want to leave just like that, retreat to the countryside, and go to a quiet place. However, at this point, the originally sweet words began to burn with anger, but, on that day my lover and children died, and I killed everyone involved in this time. I was in despair. In the factory, only Jinbin's voice rang. Jinbing's face was already distorted, obviously immersed in memory, he was like an angry devil, his blood-red eyes made people feel chills down their spine. I can't wait for everyone to be buried with them, but I still have a little fantasy. I frantically search for all possibilities, just want to be able to resurrect them. However, for so many years, I have been searching frantically, but there is no news. How many times I have hoped, all of them have turned into disappointment. 837 until, do you know? When he said this, Jinbing's tone suddenly became high, his face was full of excitement, and even because he was too excited, he took a few steps subconsciously and looked around. He stretched out his right hand and waved it unconsciously a few times, do you know? When that grate descended, I was like a light shining in the darkness. It illuminated my dark heart. God, I never believed in the real existence of so-called gods, because for me, if there really are gods, then there should be no evil, no darkness, and no selfish desires in this world. But I was wrong, she is like light, scattered all over the earth, she is hope, the most holy hope. God doesn't care, she must have the ability to resurrect my wife and children. The high-spirited words have climbed to a higher level, resounding in everyone's ears. But a voice ruthlessly interrupted his excitement. It was Jessica. She shook her head in disdain and said, you are right, that supreme and great goddess does have the ability to resurrect your wife and children. Chapter 205. Jinbing's proposal. But why? Why does that goddess want to resurrect your wife and children? Jessica said with a sneer on her face, is it because you are Jinbin? Because you are the underground emperor of the world's underworld? Or are you acting hypocritical outside? A charity act. Wake up, you are just a villain, a sinner full of evil, God is just, and she will never let her scale be out of balance. What you have done, let alone resurrecting your wife and children mercifully, I am afraid that not only will you go to hell, but your wife and children will also suffer pain forever in with you. Jessica's words were like sharp knives, piercing Jinbing's heart. Jinbing waved his hand suddenly, and roared angrily, no, my wife and children are innocent. All the crimes were committed by me, and all the punishments should be borne by me alone. Don't be kidding, Wilson. Jessica was persistent, and even called out Jinbing's real name directly, everything is innocent, your wife and children didn't enjoy the benefits of the money you obtained through crime. The expensive delicacies, drinks, and powdered milk that your wife and children ate contained the blood and lives of countless people. Your wife and children enjoy the benefits you bring, but don't need to pay the price. You're thinking nicely, Wilson. Call. Jessica ruthlessly untied the gold and made everything look grand. Countless people present couldn't help but look at Jessica and click their tongues secretly with these classic words. This girl is really beautiful, but it's a pity that she just has a mouth. When the mouth opens, it really pokes into the heart. It's too ruthless. Look at Jinbing's angry panting appearance and his undulating chest. If it continues to be stimulated, I'm afraid Jinbing had to die suddenly on the spot. Several young X-Men members looked at Jessica with admiration. Several young fighters felt that Jessica was so cool that she used language as an art, and her thinking was too clear. For a while, the factory fell into silence again. Jessica raised her head proudly, looking proud. Smiley face. Jinbing's heart was filled with anger, and his gaze towards Jessica had already turned blood red, because this woman had completely torn up all his external disguises, which allowed him to keep self-packaging. But I don't know what I thought of, and the blood in my eyes slowly faded away. The temperament became flat, and he said, maybe it's like what you said, so I know that my hope is just a wish, and this wish may never come true. So I took a different path. Since the gods are unwilling to help me, then I will solve the mystery of becoming a god, I will master the power of the gods, and I will use the power of the gods to resurrect my family. I didn't have any idea at first, but I studied all the known battles of the saints, especially the battle in the Gulf of California. They encountered that powerful demon and suffered heavy injuries, so I guessed whether there was something missing there. Blood, blood clots, flesh tissue, hair, etc. You shouldn't be the only one who thought of this, Daredevil said. What Jinbing could think of, he couldn't believe that those gang of hungry wolves couldn't think of it. Sure enough, Gold and Point nodded, yes, some of them did think of it, so they blocked that area and sea area as quickly as possible, and carried out a large-scale search, but their speed was faster than their locals, the locals picked up these pieces of metal. Nobody wants to give something like this to the government, it's too expensive. Obviously, I paid more. So today's transaction has been planned for a long time. It can even be said that there are many intrigues and even fights in the dark. Jinbing is not the only one who wants the fragments of the holy clothes. Countless forces have participated in it. And gold can finally become the object of transaction, except that it costs a lot of dollars. He has already fought against countless forces. He is the biggest winner. However, it is a pity that because of his biggest help to John, he was approached by the Mutant Academy and broke the deal. It can be said to be a peck. It's a very good story, but it's a pity that it's whimsical. Wilson, you have caused so many innocent people to die. There must be rewards in the dark. Your rewards must be evil. The pain you have endured is just punishment. Daredevil stared at Jinbin and said in a deep voice. Since the appearance of Athena, the thing of fate has come alive in the past few years. Many people believe in fate and karma. When villains do countless evil deeds, they will inevitably be punished by God. This is the causal relationship. Daredevil has always believed in destiny, and now even more so. All the mistakes made by Jinbing have ushered in bad retribution, and this bad retribution has affected Jinbing's wife and children in the end. Jinbin sighed, unwilling to talk too much nonsense. He looked at Qin. So, what do you want to do? I know that your group status is still embarrassing. Although I am a villain, I have never attacked mutants, and even treated them preferentially. There should be no conflicts between us. Give me this thing, and I can be your ally. Xiang, Jian Hoseo, Xin, I have maliciously helped you in some aspects and connections. Jin was not incompetent and furious, but directly laid out his interests and let Qin make a choice. All the adults talked about were interests, the dark world, the extraordinary world, this is the reality. So he wouldn't be stupid enough to resent Qin for breaking his deal and his hopes. Facing Jinbing's request, Qin tilted her head slightly. She knew very well that Jin was not lying. This guy's memory had let her know a lot of things. Some high-ranking officials in New York have interests in Jinbing. Even certain consortiums that have great influence in the United States have some connections. From a normal point of view, the kindness of accepting gold is a good choice for the group of mutants. Chapter 206. The nasty Spider-Man, but it's a pity that Qin is not interested in this condition. Unleashing her goodwill, perhaps through Jinbing's personal connections, may be able to improve the status of mutants. But compared to Sanctuary, this little bit of goodwill is simply insignificant. After all, this lunatic is trying to meddle in the power of the gods. If she didn't see it, it's okay to say, knowing that she saw it, but indulged the other party, maybe Sanctuary didn't care, but at least her attitude would make the Saint fighters somewhat unhappy. Jane is not stupid at all. Of course, this thought was just a momentary thought of Qin, and Jin didn't know that Qin had already sat down to make a decision, and planned to continue to persuade. However, footsteps suddenly came to my ears. The slight sound of footsteps can't even be heard by ordinary people, but there are many people present who are not ordinary people, so they can naturally detect it. Qin, Jin, and the others turned their heads and looked over. Others who didn't hear them subconsciously followed their gazes, and saw a man in a red spider tight-fitting suit walking silently under the dark night sky. When seeing this figure, many people present raised their eyebrows involuntarily, feeling very surprised. Spider-Man. Spider 837 Spider-Man? This guy hasn't appeared for a long time. I thought he was dead, but I didn't expect to appear here. Why is he here? This guy claims to be a good neighbor of people, and he is a nosy guy, but he came here at this time, isn't he really afraid of death? It's impressively official Spider-Man Peter Parker. Peter glanced around lightly, then set his eyes on the bronze and silver medals floating in front of Jinbin, and nodded slightly. He had suddenly sensed that there was a faint small universe belonging to the Saint Seiya in New York, and he thought, what happened to the Saint Seiya? I didn't expect it to be a fragment of the holy cloth. Peter breathed a sigh of relief. Although he has not yet awakened the small universe, he is only one step away. He can still sense the small universe, but it is not so thorough, which also caused his previous misjudgment. Hey guys, it looks like a lot of fun tonight, are you having a party? Peter said jokingly, holding out a hand. No one in the room spoke, but Qin glanced at the little spider, thoughtfully. Kfei, although he didn't respond to Peter's words, he didn't feel the slightest bit of embarrassment, and greeted you, members of the Defenders, as if he was acquainted. Hey guys, great to meet you, have to say we had a great time working together last time. Peter's words made Jinbin's face darken. The last time there was a battle at the container terminal, the Defenders teamed up with Spider-Man. He set up a trap and he suffered heavy losses. Everyone was fine. That time made Jinbing's teeth itch with hatred. Apparently Peter didn't care much about Jinbin's thoughts. He stepped forward, stroked his chin, looked at the floating bronze and silver metal fragments, and suddenly said, Hey, Uncle Jinbin, can you give this to me? As soon as these words came out, everyone's face immediately changed, especially Jinbing's face became gloomy. Facing Qin, he could lower his noble head. Qin's strength allowed him to do so, but a guy who looked like a clown to him dared to talk to himself like this. Just when Jinbin had a gloomy face and made up his mind to kill the bug. Qin spoke again, but what she said made everyone unexpected. Give it to you. Qin just said something lightly, then turned around and left the factory with the other X-Men who were a little confused. Everyone, even the Defenders, was lost. What's the situation? Indeed, when Qin left the factory with the X-Men like this, the atmosphere in the factory became a little strange. Mutants of Qin's level are absolutely invincible in the factory. No matter how arrogant he is, the group of mutants and superpowers recruited by his subordinates, or the mysterious middle-aged man who sells metal fragments, dare not act rashly. But now, whether it is based on the number of people or combat power, how can this be that the Jinbing side has the absolute upper hand? That in an instant, dozens of pairs of malicious eyes swept towards the Defenders and Spider-Man Peter Parker. Why do I suddenly feel something is wrong? Luke said in a low voice, I think it is the most correct for us to run now. Shit, why did the group of mutants run away suddenly? This is a bit different from what we said before. Jessica also answered in a low voice, she was like a kitten with blown fur, watching those guys who were staring at her vigilantly. Iron Fist twisted his neck, a little uncomfortable in stall. He is confident in his own strength, and he will definitely not think that he and his partners can face this situation. As far as Jinbing's subordinates are concerned, they can't handle it. Down. Daredevil also knows the danger of the situation. He has always been puzzled by Qin's actions, but obviously now is not the time for doubts. Just when Daredevil was about to speak and retreat, Peter's voice came from next to his ear. So, Uncle, can you give me the fragment of the holy garment, it does not belong to you. Daredevil frowned immediately. Peter's words would undoubtedly anger Jinbin. Sure enough, Jinbing had already made him very angry tonight, and with Peter's words, the underworld emperor could not suppress his anger completely. Boom! I saw Jinbing's explosive version of the thigh muscles. The terrifying power from the whole body along the bones to the feet exploded a shallow pit on the ground. The dense cracks spread wantonly for more than 10 meters, and the murderous intent filled the audience as if it were real. He gritted his teeth, grimaced, and squeezed out a word. Damn bug, you keep obstructing me again and again, what do you really think you are? Kill them for me, I don't want tomorrow's sun to shine on their dirty bodies. Boom! As soon as Jinbin's words fell, a terrifying bolt of lightning was extremely swift and violent, skimming over Jinbin's temple hair, piercing the air and bombarding Peter Parker. The thick lightning is full of destructive power. Chapter 207. The end of greed. Terrible thunder currents even emitted a burnt smell in the air. However, just when such a destructive electric current was about to hit Peter, Peter suddenly raised his right hand, and with the gesture of a fist, he smashed down the thunder and lightning. Boom! The lightning was smashed into the ground by Peter's fist, and the ground was bombarded with a large shallow pit, which was scorched black enough to prove its destructive power. This picture full of visual impact shocked everyone, and even the expression of burning gold and anger changed slightly. The defenders who were about to run also stopped quietly. The factory fell into an eerie silence again. Peter was wearing a spider suit. No one knew his expression at this time. He lowered his head slightly, looked at the scorched ground, and then looked at Jinbin and the mutant who released lightning behind him. He shook his head and said softly, if it was 2 months ago, this might have caused me some harm, but now, you don't imagine what kind of cruel environment training I have experienced during the holidays. None of you have the natural power that can cause harm to my current body, so let me take those pieces of the holy clothes now. The power they contain is not something you can bear. Peter spoke with sincerity. However, Jinbin, who had already fallen into longing for the resurrection of his family, did not listen at all. Peter's words were undoubtedly robbing him of his last hope. Jin is not a hero by any means. In the case of anger, he still maintained enough reason, and Peter showed strength that made him feel uneasy. Just for this, he suppressed the desire to crush Peter's bones little by little, and said in a deep voice, Spider-Man, I don't know why you must stop me from obtaining the pieces of the holy cloth, but this piece it's none of your business, let's get out of here, and I can guarantee Hell's Kitchen will be at peace forever. You want to fight crime, I can transform. If you want to be superheroes, I can tell you all the information about making deals. I only want my wife and children to live. Kim made the biggest concession. It can be said that once he does this, first of all, his prestige in the underworld will suffer a huge blow, and his business will also plummet, but Jin doesn't care at all. As he said, compared with his wife and children, he can give up any business status. However, Peter still shook his head in denial. This is simply two different things. He looked directly at Jinbin. At this time, Jinbin's face was extremely gloomy, and his chest began to rise and fall rapidly. He also knew that the other party was like a volcano waiting to erupt at any time. Once he solved it, the man in front of him would definitely release himself. All the rage. A person who really cares about his family is the most dangerous and terrifying. However, that's how Peter refused. He didn't want to break Jinbin's fantasy, but the reality is so cruel, no matter whether the other party listens to it or not. Just when Jinbin was about to kill everyone, Peter spoke. If you want pieces of the holy cloth, then you should know what the holy cloth is. Listening to Peter's words, Jinbin swallowed the words just now, and he frowned, what exactly do you want to say? Peter ignored Jinbin's expression, and said to himself, the holy clothes were created by the supreme goddess Athena. Smiley face, there are a total of 88 pieces, corresponding to the 88 constellations and 88 saint warriors. In the age of ancient myths that modern humans cannot know, in order to protect the peace of the earth, the saints wore holy clothes and fought against the gods. They never feared death or gods. They threw their heads and shed blood, and sacrificed the lives of countless saints, which have continued to this day. The holy clothes carry their memory, inheritance, and that period of history that people will never forget. It also contains the powerful power left by generations of saints. Do you think ordinary humans can really master such power? Even if it's just a fragment of the holy garment? Peter's soft words struck everyone like a bolt of lightning, especially Jinbin. He froze in place, his eyes seemed to lose focus, and he murmured, holy cloth, cosmos, power. Maybe Jinbin knew this a long time ago, but he still didn't believe it, and he was unwilling to give up the only hope in his heart. Of course, there is also a trace of wild hope buried in the bottom of my heart. That's human nature, greed. Even if they know that they can't achieve their goals, they are willing to try for the only possible glimmer of hope, even if they are willing to risk death. Seeing Jinbin's appearance, Peter sighed, Mr. Jinbin, do you really think that those people who are as powerful as gods will not notice it if you study the fragments of the holy clothes? Stealing the power of the gods, what kind of madness is this? Rumble. As Peter's words fell, he saw that the floating pieces of holy clothing suddenly emitted dazzling and boundless light, and the powerful dazzling light almost blinded everyone's eyes. Everyone in the factory couldn't help closing their eyes. The terrifying fluctuations began to spread and spread in the air. Finally, when the light gradually softened, everyone opened their eyes, but they were taken aback by the scene. The image of the space in front of me seems to be in slow motion. Viscous fluctuations in the air are visible to the naked eye. There are tiny particles floating in the space. The space in front of me seems to be isolated from the real world. All of them are in such a world, and they can't help feeling a great terror in their hearts. This kind of horror is like a natural disaster coming at any time and devouring them. What is this, what's going on? The middle-aged man who originally traded with Jin couldn't help murmuring. He was both dazed and terrified. Human beings will never be able to understand the mysterious and vast power. The power of fear is the essence. Peter shook his head and sighed. Originally, it would be fine if Jinbin could give up the fragments of the holy clothes, but his greed became more and more vigorous, causing the fragments to detect them, which would naturally attract their owners. Sure enough, the next second, A figure suddenly appeared. Chapter 208. The extremely crazy Aquarius, a tall and graceful figure, wearing that noble and gorgeous golden armor, with fluttering white hair. The beautiful face is full of coldness, like the iceberg, especially the pupils. The traces of blue are skipped from time to time, making people feel as if their souls are going to be frozen at a glance. Just standing there like this, no matter who it is, everyone present, even Jinbing, the underworld emperor who has a cruel heart and controls the lives of countless people, can't help feeling like kneeling down and submitting. Facing other people, if Jinbing had even the slightest thought of this, he swore that that person would be killed in the most cruel way. This is true no matter how many lives of his subordinates are paid. But the person in front of him who is facing him now absolutely dare not have such thoughts. Because, the person in front of him has the power of a with 837, a terrifying mansion that can make people fall into the endless with just one thought. Gold Saint Athena. Established by the Supreme Athena herself, it is a terrifying guard army that can fight against the ancient gods. A fist can tear the sky apart, a foot can crush the earth, and it is impossible to have any disrespectful thoughts about such a character. This is not the case with Jin, let alone others. The space ripples and fluctuations that were generated before seemed to be just an illusion. With the inaudible strange sound flashing, the entire interior space of the factory returned to its original calm appearance again. Compared with before, there is only one more person who should not appear. Looking at the shape of the golden holy clothes, everyone flashed a name at the same time. Ella, the gold saint of Aquarius, fought fiercely with Mephisto, the demon king of in the Gulf of California, and then got the golden saint clothes, officially becoming a gold saint. Damn it, how could a saint suddenly appear here, and he is a gold rank saint? Jinbing cursed inwardly, that kind of fear and despair rose up involuntarily. This time, all his plans fell through, and he had to face the questioning of a golden saint. After all, his actions and plans are enough to make Saint Seiya angry. No one would want mere humble ants and mortals to try to get their hands on their own power. Jin didn't believe it either. Even if the supreme goddess was kind, she wouldn't let her go. Even if the goddess doesn't care, aren't these saints angry? The next scene was just as Jinbin had imagined. The moment Ella appeared, her eyes were on the floating metal fragments of the holy clothes. Her red lips were slightly parted, and her pleasant voice was as cold as an ice spring. Che factory. Sure enough, they are fragments. Are they left over from the last bay? I didn't expect you to find them, and you even tried to decipher their power in vain. Are you confident or stupid? After finishing speaking, her eyes were on Jinbing. For example, the latter's whole body was frozen in an instant, and he didn't even dare to move his facial muscles. He just swallowed his saliva and stood there dumbfounded. Not to mention the rest of the people, their legs started to tremble with fright. Ella raised her hand lightly, and saw that the floating metal fragments suddenly flew to her palm, like a few celestial bodies slowly floating and moving around. Although it is only a fragment, there is an extremely huge small universe inside. Once a little stimulation is stimulated, the huge energy will definitely destroy the entire New York in an instant, and millions of people will be wiped out. Ella stared at it with her eyes as cold as frost, holding Jin, and said softly. His tone paused, and under the unbelievable eyes of everyone, he spoke again. So should you say that your ignorant is fearless, or is it a lunatic? This sentence is like a description between ordinary friends. The tone may be a little cold, but at least it does not contain the slightest killing intent. However, it was such a tone that made people even more frightened. Sometimes an understatement is much more terrifying than a direct confrontation with anger. Because, in that way, it may be that there is a real horror hidden. Apparently, Ella is exactly that. Jinbing opened his mouth to say something, but his lips moved. In the end, he probably didn't try to defend himself, because in the cunning fox, it depends on who he is facing. Jin can use his lies and cunning to deceive people with higher status than himself. But he knew that he could not deceive at all. He fell silent. The despair in my heart is like the water that keeps accumulating, and it accumulates deeper and deeper. The atmosphere fell into silence again. No one dared to speak in this weird scene, even Peter, who was out of temper, remained silent. When he was practicing in the sanctuary, he knew a lot of saints in the sanctuary, and every saint was easy to get along with. Made Peter feel like a friend. But if you count the saints, you feel scared. It's Ella. Normally, she treats her friends with a cold face, but she is very gentle and never gets angry easily. However, there is an extremely terrifying thing hidden in her soul. This thing is invisible and never changes. Even because of this, when Ella is fighting, it will make Ella's thinking run faster. Let Ella's fighting consciousness and potential surge faster. However, when Ella really used her anger, this hidden thing will make Ella seem to be another person, just like another personality. But the Pope once said that it stems from Ella's childhood experience. This thing is powerful because Ella is strong, and at some point in the future, it will become an opportunity for Ella to break through the ninth sense. But now, if Ella 5.0 gets angry, she will become a completely different person. A very crazy person. Peter recalled the smacking expressions of the other saints back then. Obviously, he had seen with his own eyes what kind of horror the extremely crazy Ella was. Although Peter did not witness it with his own eyes. But those holy fighters either already have the seventh sense, or have stepped into the existence of the seventh sense. As a result, when it comes to the angry Ella, their expressions are a bit wrong, obviously they are afraid. This is a good example of how scary an angry Ella can be. Anyway, Peter himself would definitely not want to see it. Chapter 209. The principle of not killing. It seems that everyone here, except for these few, there is no a good man, everyone is stained with the blood of innocent people, and he is involved in this matter again. Then please use your own lives to repent. Ella casually said something that made Jinbin and others despair. The defenders' hair stood on end, and a wordless fear rose up, even though the defenders knew that they would not include themselves. But just from the perspective of a bystander, watching dozens of lives being so easily decided to die, this kind of shock is shocking. Adhering to the principle of not killing, Daredevil frowned. His character made him completely ignore the surprise of his power level, so he mustered up the courage to speak up, trying to stop Isla from killing innocent people indiscriminately. Dear Ms. IRA, I think Jinbing and the others are evil and killing innocent people. They should have laws to punish them, instead of. Daredevil 16's words were like a steel knife piercing into the hearts of other companions, especially Luke, who quickly reached out and grabbed Daredevil's hand to interrupt his words. Daredevil usually upholds the principle of not killing, and they can follow suit in action. But that's just what they think. They need to know that the person they are facing now is like a divine mansion. It is a completely detached existence from humans. Even if this god's residence is usually more responsible for protecting the earth and human beings. But it doesn't mean that Daredevil can preach to such an existence, and even try to persuade the other party with his own ideas, which is no different from courting death. Are you crazy? Jessica stared fiercely at Daredevil, yelled angrily in a low voice, and almost called out Daredevil's original name directly. Jessica was almost going crazy with the idiot Daredevil. Although Jessica agrees with Daredevil as a companion and is willing to sacrifice herself for her companions, it doesn't mean that she is willing to suffer unreasonable disasters and die at the hands of other saints. Daredevil knows this very well, but he still insists. The idea of not killing gave him an incomparably firm belief. Even when he was in a desperate situation, he never regretted it. Now he is the same even when facing a holy warrior like a god's mansion. Peter glanced at Daredevil deeply. Peter, who used to be Spider-Man, also upholds the principle of not killing, which is exactly the same as Daredevil, but since he experienced the cruel training during the holidays and has seen too many strong men, the pattern in his heart has already been opened. In the face of criminals who are not serious crimes, he can naturally not kill them. Smiley face, but in the face of those hopeless people, people with blood on their hands, it is easy to kill, and more cruel methods can be used to punish sinners. The laws of the world have no effect on those guys whose souls are black. Only more ruthless means can restrain evil. Fierce? Tyrannical? Then torture and deal with you with methods that make you more fearful. But Daredevil's belief, Peter didn't hate it. He shrugged and sat halfway on the metal workbench and watched like this. He knew that even if Daredevil spoke to stop him, Ella would not kill him. The result was just as Peter thought. Although Daredevil opened his mouth to try to stop Ella, Ella was not angry, she just turned her head and glanced at Daredevil, without any fluctuations in her expression, and said softly, the sins that each of them bear are all far more than the murderers in those prisons. You want them to go to jail? The police won't arrest them at all, because when they commit crimes, there is no evidence left behind, and even if there is evidence, the police will not arrest them. Because they are powerful, you caught them and sent them to prison. 2 days later, they will be sent out of prison by the police with the highest profile and continue to commit crimes. Then, I want to ask you, what is the meaning of the law? Alan ruthlessly pried open the curtain called reality, so realistic that it made people feel desperate. Everyone here is an executioner, and innocent lives have died in their hands, but the law can't judge them at all. Because the rules are only used to restrain those ordinary people, those who walk in the dark and have power, in a sense, they are above the rules. Jinbin and the other group of people knew it well, they didn't make a sound, but Daredevil still wanted to say something. He's a lawyer, he's a steadfast guardian of the law. Even if what Ella said is indeed true, Daredevil still believes that many things can be changed. Seeing that Daredevil seemed to be about to speak, Ella waved directly. I saw pictures suddenly appearing in front of everyone, and the pictures that caught my eye were crime scenes one after another, some were burglary and murder, and some people with superpowers were wantonly laughing and killing ordinary innocent people. What they heard in their ears were the arrogant laughter of those criminals and the wailing and pleading of innocent ordinary people. Those cruel pictures represent the loss of innocent lives in 837. These pictures can be seen even as a Daredevil who has lost his eyesight, because these patterns are directly introduced into his brain. He didn't recognize the faces of those people, but those voices and figures made him feel familiar. Suddenly, he felt an inexplicable panic. These people Iron Fist, Jessica, and Luke looked at these pictures, and there was a slight change on their faces, with an expression of disbelief. Ella's voice continued to be heard next to her ear. Why, do you feel familiar? There are a total of 44 criminals here, all of whom were captured and sent to prison by you or your Defenders Alliance, but they used various reasons, re-enter society from prison. Originally, each of them should have been shot. However, they came out. During this period of time, without your knowledge, these 44 crimes continued to commit heinous crimes, resulting in the death of nearly 100 people. So, do you think the so-called law should treat these people in this way? Chapter 210. Daredevil's loneliness. This shouldn't be. They shouldn't be out of prison, they should be in prison for their sins. Daredevil never thought that the truth would be so cruel. He couldn't believe it. The US law has the death penalty, but there are not too many cases where the death penalty is actually imposed. Unless it causes a huge and bad impact, most of the death penalty will be converted into life imprisonment after the suspension. Because, quite simply, most American prisons are corporate. Prisons need a large number of criminals and the government in exchange for large sums of money. It can be said that almost every criminal is wealth, and criminals are also free and easy to use labor. It would be a pity to kill them. There are many ways in it. Daredevil doesn't know a lot about it, but it's only superficial. He also knows that there are many disadvantages and loopholes in American law. But he is a typical idealist and a loyal follower of the law. He knows that there is a lot of darkness above the law, but he firmly believes that one day it will be improved, and those criminals caught and thrown into prison by him, even if they have no death penalty, at least they will not be able to get out of prison for the rest of their lives. However, now Ella puts the cruel truth in front of him. It is because he believed in the so-called law and upheld the principle of not killing, but caused more innocent people to die at the hands of criminals who should have stayed in prison. Perhaps it should not be said that he caused it directly or indirectly. But he once had the chance to change all of this, but he didn't, which made Daredevil unacceptable. It can be said that he has already put the blame on himself at this time. He hated the damned criminals, and prisons. Why is this happening? Could it be that everything he believed in was originally is it wrong? Daredevil immediately fell into the vortex of doubting his own ideas. Ella ignored Daredevil's pain at this time, and she continued softly, everyone has their own ideas. Ideas and beliefs are the driving force for human progress, and they are all worthy of respect. Although I am a gold saint, but also respect your philosophy. But respect is mutual. I respect your ideas, so you should also respect our ideas. Also, the sanctuary, the saint warrior, has its own code of conduct. The sanctuary upholds the will of the crown, protects peace and order, and basically does not interfere with the affairs of human beings. But speaking of this, Isla raised her eyes slightly, her tone became colder, and the topic changed, but when we reach our level of existence, there has already been a huge change in the way we do things. Human laws can limit you humans, but they cannot limit us. For sanctuary, sin should be punished enough. If you kill someone, you must pay the price of your life to pay back. If you do a lot of evil, then even your soul should be thrown into to atone for those innocent people. So you were wrong from the start. To put it bluntly, Daredevil can prevent other superheroes from wanton killing because of different ideas. For example, the new super-killing Punisher recently appeared in Hell's Kitchen. The two sides even fought because of this relationship. But Daredevil can only stop them. But he couldn't stop someone who was far stronger than him. God. Daredevil fell silent, he didn't speak. Perhaps the scene just now had shocked him as well. Isla glanced at Daredevil lightly, then gently raised her hand, with her index finger raised to the sky. The turbulent breath slowly spread from her body. In just an instant, the original temperature of the air began to drop rapidly, a smear of frost fell from the sky out of thin air, and a deadly freezing storm had already arrived. Feel the danger of this intense death. Jinbing and other countless people suddenly changed their faces. Jinbing roared even more angrily, let's fight together, this is our only chance. Jin doesn't want to die yet, he still has his own ideals, he still wants to see his wife and children, that unwillingness makes Jin want to fight for himself in the end. The madness under despair drove Jinbing's blood to surge. Years of exercise, which has surpassed the limit of human physical fitness, burst out completely at this moment, and I saw that the originally fat muscles, abdomen, thighs, etc. suddenly agitated, the expensive suit was constantly torn, and the explosive muscles visible to the naked eye exploded. Roar! The angry Jinbing stomped on the ground with his right foot, and rushed towards Ella like a tank bursting. Jinbing thought very well, and if he shot together with other mutants with superpowers, he might be able to open up a glimmer of life. But Jinbing was wrong. That is the perception of strength between the two parties, which cannot be described as far apart. Jinbing was able to act out of despair and anger because he had his own obsession and will in his heart. The will to miss his wife and children allowed him to break through the coercion that belonged to Ella, but it did not mean that other people could. Jinbing punched fiercely, hitting Ella's beautiful left cheek. However, when the distance between the two sides was only half a meter, Jinbing's bursting posture suddenly stopped, and he kept the posture of waving his fists, motionless. Crack! Crack! Jin couldn't believe it at all, he only felt that his internal organs seemed to be frozen by a sudden burst of cold air. Qian Hoseo, his eyes were pressed down, and when he saw the picture in front of him, despair and horror flashed in his eyes. He saw that under his feet, the terrible frost had already covered his body without knowing when, and it continued to spread towards his whole body. The cold air instantly killed all his muscles and cells. And Jinbin didn't even feel any pain at this time. He just wanted to scold those idiots angrily. He was actually waiting to die there. However, Jinbin didn't expect that it wasn't that other people didn't want to fight to the death, but that the heavy pressure brought by Ella's own powerful pressure made them crushed physically, genetically, and spiritually. Type of suppression. They don't have Jinbin's firm belief and strong physical fitness. Chapter 211. Gold and fall. However, no matter how hard you struggle, under absolute power, everything is futile. It makes no difference whether you struggle or not. At most, people are slightly surprised by Jinbing's firm will. Click. All distracting thoughts completely dissipated in an instant, and the terrifying icy air froze all the people present into ice sculptures one after another. The panic and despair on the faces of the people inside the ice sculptures were clearly visible. All the flavors of all living beings are fully revealed at this moment. Seeing the scene in front of them, the remaining defenders couldn't help swallowing and shivering. The temperature here is frighteningly low. Even if they are all people with excellent physical fitness, they all feel that the cold air is eroding their nervous system. But what chilled their hearts the most was the decisive means of the Golden Saint in front of them. It's really thanks to the saints who have been fighting against evil gods and demons from other dimensions all the year round, and it's also thanks to the noble character of the saints, otherwise, the earth would fall in an instant. Iron Fist clicked his tongue secretly. Jessica is full of yearning, the same woman, the saint warrior named Ella in front of her is obviously much younger than her, but the opponent already has the power to destroy the world. With such power, Ella has long been beyond the imagination of ordinary humans, no matter in terms of pattern or vision. If only she could have such power. Maybe the pain in the past would never have happened at all, and now there is still the lingering haze in her heart, fearing the man she hates and fears. An understatement solved the old enemy Jinbing and a group of people who were causing headaches for the Defenders Alliance, and Isla did not have the slightest disturbance. This group of people who were burdened with sin died at her hands, and she would not feel any guilt. It's like crushing a disgusting bed bug. The beautiful eyes just glanced at the defenders, then looked at Peter, she nodded slightly, and said hello, Peter, whose name was directly called out, smiled helplessly under the mask, and said, hello, Ella. The Pope values your potential very much, and hopes that you will catch up with us as soon as possible. Ella raised her head slightly, and seemed to see the future of the endless river of fate through the ceiling of the factory, and said softly, the crisis in the future is still approaching, we need more companions to fight side by side to protect the goddess and protect peace. When the defenders heard this, their hearts couldn't help but move. Future crisis? What is the crisis that even the Golden Saints talk about? Smiley face, but at least it must be a crisis that is enough to threaten the world and even the universe, otherwise it seems that the Golden Saint would not be so eager for Spider-Man to follow in their footsteps. Want more companions. Peter nodded silently. Although he has not awakened the small universe, he often feels an inexplicable crisis approaching constantly. The feeling is very strange, like a sword of Damocles hanging above his head. When Ella saw Peter's appearance, a trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. She didn't expect that Peter, who hadn't awakened yet, seemed to be aware of the crisis. It made sense for this future companion to be valued by the Pope. She nodded her head, and instead of talking, she turned around suddenly, her white jade cloak fluttering in the wind, and walked towards the outside of the factory with graceful steps. On without taking a step, it is like crossing a distance of thousands of rivers and mountains, one step of thousands of miles, and disappearing in front of everyone in an instant. Seeing such a scene, Jessica couldn't help but let out a wow, full of envy. This kind of power is really yearning. Forget it, this kind of power is not what humans should be able to possess. Iron Fist scratched his head and sighed. It is precisely because of the strength of the saints that they can surround the earth without being invaded by foreign evil gods and monsters. Compared with us, they are real guardians and superheroes. Luke said softly. All they do is fight criminals, but their abilities can only allow them to do so much. But the saints are different, maybe right now, at this moment, where people can't see, they are fighting with a group of terrifying and powerful monsters, fighting battles. That's what's really exciting. Daredevil didn't speak, he remained silent, he was digesting the huge shock that had brought him before. And Peter, who did not know when he had disappeared in the factory. In an empty square, an X-Men Blackbird fighter plane is parked. Jean and the members of the X-Men were waiting for something not far from the fighter plane. Among them, Logan asked with some doubts, Jean, what are you waiting for? Ever since leaving the factory, Jean seemed to be waiting here for someone. Scott was also a little puzzled. Jean pursed her lips, and just when she was about to speak, there was a sudden sound of metal and ground bursting in everyone's ears. It was the sound of footsteps, although it wasn't heavy, it was like a drum beating, hitting everyone's heart heavily. Logan was even more vigilant like a ferocious wolf, with 6 steel claws extending out of his hands. Tread. 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 As the footsteps became more and more clear, the next second, everyone's eyes blurred, and they saw a figure appearing in front of them, less than 5 meters away from each other. This surprised all the members of the X-Men, and when everyone was vigilant, through the moonlight hanging in the sky, they finally saw the appearance of the person in front of them. A dazzling golden armor, a white jade cloak, and white hair fluttering in the wind. The combination of her beautiful face and this armor makes her as beautiful as an ice goddess. This is... Scott's pupils shrank suddenly, Gold Saint Seiya. The rest of the people were also shocked in their hearts, as if they had set off a wave of horror. They didn't expect that the person Jean was waiting for would be a golden saint. The Phoenix Force wants me to wait for your arrival. Jean stared at the beautiful girl in front of her, her eyebrows began to wrinkle unconsciously. Because the other party put a lot of pressure on her. This was the first time she had felt like this since merging the Phoenix Force. You must know that after the fusion of the Phoenix Force, her strength has increased day by day, so that until now, she still doesn't know how strong she is. Chapter 212. Phoenix Jean, however, facing the girl in front of her, she still sensed the danger. Very strong danger. This danger was detected by the intuition given to her by the Phoenix Force. Jean believes that if there is a fight, even if she has the ancient power of the Phoenix, it is very likely that she will still not be this opponent. Fortunately, the two sides are not considered enemies at this time. So Jean was not as vigilant as she appeared. Ayla looked at Jean, and strands of surprise and admiration flashed in her eyes. The power of the Phoenix is indeed one of the oldest powers. It is really powerful. When you give you time, it will definitely grow to an impressive level. Point. The current violin is not strong enough. But it doesn't mean that she is not strong enough in the future. Jean's potential is endless. It is impossible to stand alone at the level of the Heavenly Father. She still has a wider road to go. Ella glanced at the X-Men beside Jean, and said softly, in the name of the Pope, I come to invite you to join the sanctuary and become a saint. Boom! As soon as these words were uttered, the eyes of the entire X-Men suddenly widened. Everyone stared at the girl in front of them, and none of them could believe what they just said. Join the sanctuary and become a saint fighter, these two words are now in the whole world. No matter who you tell it to, I'm afraid no one will hesitate at all. It can be said that if you become a saint, you will become a god. The power of Saint Seiya is well known to the whole world. As the guards directly under the goddess Athena, the saints are responsible for protecting the peace and tranquility of the earth. They will inevitably fight evil gods and monsters from other dimensions, and the danger can be imagined. But even the danger is worth it. After all, from a mortal to a god, strength, longevity, and the vast real world that human beings cannot touch. Human nature, the biggest source of motivation is curiosity and exploration. However, the selection of saints is too mysterious, but every time they appear, they will transform from an ordinary person to possess the power to destroy the world. Unexpectedly, this time, the Golden Saint actually came to invite Jean to join the sanctuary and become a saint. What makes everyone even more puzzled is that Jean's age and special status seem to be the first case. Why is this happening? They believe that Sanctuary's actions must have a deep meaning. Logan, Scott, and Storm looked at each other and looked at Jean, and the three of them suddenly recalled some words that Jean had said. She wasn't fit to join the Avengers, but something greater would invite her. Could it be? At that time, Jean had already expected today? Under the surprised eyes of everyone, Jean nodded, although I have seen today, I still want to ask, why did you choose me? Jean doesn't reject joining the Sanctuary at all. Although Jean doesn't like fighting, but at some point, she has reached this point, and she has to take responsibility. This responsibility is nothing more than big and small. The former Jean, after the death of the professor, took on the responsibility of protecting the school and protecting the mutants, but when she joined the sanctuary, she assumed the responsibility to extend to the whole world and even the entire human race. Most importantly, of course, these two responsibilities do not conflict. Instead, she joins the sanctuary and becomes a saint, which will only make the mutant race to a better life. In the future, if someone wants to move mutants, they really have to weigh it. It's just that she still wants to know why she was chosen. In the sanctuary, ruled by the will of the goddess Athena, with the power of the supreme god, select talented children with good qualities. After training, within 5 years, a large number of children can cultivate the sixth sense and even the first sense. The saint of 7 senses. She shouldn't be needed. Ella's cherry lips parted slightly, and she explained, the force of the phoenix. The force of the phoenix. The phoenix force is one of the oldest forces. She is very special and powerful. She used to be torn apart for some reason and spread all over the universe, but the most powerful part has integrated into your body. You have been recognized by her. You will become the most perfect host of the phoenix force. In the future, you will usher in a very terrifying growth rate and become one of the few strong men in the universe. So that's the case. Jean and the other X-Men members nodded thoughtfully. The huge power hidden in Jean's body has always been a secret in the academy. Many people know that power is called the power of the phoenix, and they know a little bit about it, but only a little bit. Ella's explanation undoubtedly made everyone suddenly enlightened. Then there was a burst of joy. They knew that the power of the phoenix was very powerful, but judging from this, Jean would definitely grow to a terrifying level that no one could have expected in the future. However, Ella broke the fantasy in their hearts. It's just that when it's powerful, it's just empty. Everyone frowned. I believe you have also noticed that the current you are not much different from the Heavenly Father level. I have broken through to the 7th sense, and I am also the Heavenly Father. You and I are at the same level. If there is a war between us, whoever will win and who will lose. Ella looked directly into Jean's eyes. The latter replied without hesitation, I am not your opponent, and the winner will be decided in a very short time. These words made Logan and the others unbelievable. Water? Why? Logan asked directly with a face full of surprise. Logically speaking, even if the saints are strong, even if they are the guards personally selected by the goddess Athena, there must be a limit. They are obviously at the same level. Even if Jean can't beat, she shouldn't follow what she said that way, the winner will be decided in a short time. Then this is no different from rolling. Jean Lu frowned, and explained, first of all, although I have been baptized by the power of the phoenix all the time, and my physical fitness has been getting stronger, but in the end, it is only limited than before. My strongest advantage is my huge spirit. Force that can manipulate space, matter, energy, and even time. But saints can do all of this, and their physical strength far surpasses mine, crushing all aspects of combat consciousness and thinking. With the accumulation of various advantages, the gap will naturally become very large. Chapter 213. Sokka Star. To put it bluntly, there is actually not much difference in power between the force of the phoenix and the Saint Seiya Cosmos. But the real difference is the person who uses this power. As the host, Jean can indeed use the power of the phoenix proficiently, but she can't use it endlessly to manipulate such power. So what if the phoenix force acts on Ella? Not to mention the unique divine power contained in the golden holy clothing personally made by the existence of the main level, the physical fitness of the saint warrior itself has been exaggerated to the extreme. No matter how hard Renkin is working, it will take a long time to break through the defense. And Ella? Her speed, strength, fighting thinking, etc. are all combined, and that is the real perfect fighter. Once she gets into the distance, Jean's phoenix force can't do much 837 at all, and she will end up being killed instantly. After Jean explained, the people behind him suddenly understood. Then he couldn't help but click his tongue again, the more he knew about Saint Seiya, the more he could feel the terror of Saint Seiya. Many strong people in the world have their own priorities, and they also have their flaws. However, there are no saints at all. Full range of polygonal fighters. Ella took the words softly, you have the power of the phoenix, but the power you use is very rough. Smiley face. In contrast, after you become a saint warrior, this potential will be brought out endlessly. Your future achievements must be limitless. The Pope once said that in the future you may be among the best among all saints. How many? Logan raised his eyebrows. With the blessing of the power of the phoenix under the same strength, after awakening the small universe and becoming a saint, the overall combat power is actually only the top few? Ella chuckled and shook her head, do you have some misunderstandings about our saint fighters? Although there was no offensiveness between the words, the pride and pride in it could be clearly heard, every one of our selected children, according to the words of the Pope, apart from the necessary character, their own aptitude is one of the best among all human beings. We are the spokespersons of talent. At our level, talent and will are the most important. Jean has the power of the phoenix. After washing with power, she can indeed be said to have amazing talent, but there are many people who are more talented than her. Sigh, by the time she breaks through the 7th sense, maybe we have already reached the 8th sense. Furthermore, small universes of the same level also have gaps. Okay, the words have been brought. While speaking, Ella stretched out her hand, palm up, and saw a delicate and beautiful gold coin floating in her hand with a halo, and Ella didn't see any movement. Just like that, he flew to Jean. The latter stretched out his hand to take it, and Ella's voice came from his ear again. When you want to go to the sanctuary, this gold coin can open the door to the sanctuary, and the portal will send you to the sanctuary. In addition, the Pope will personally train you when you go to the sanctuary. The training time will it's very long, so it's best to explain the things about your school in advance. After finishing speaking, Ella nodded to Jean, then turned and walked out of the park. With the crisp sound of metal stepping on the ground, her figure slowly disappeared into the night, leaving Jean alone to think. Boom. On a planet, the soft sunlight came from the planet. I saw the top of a steel building, and on the huge square, a luxurious sightseeing spaceship landed. Bart, Tina, Alfred, and the Guardians of the Galaxy walk out of it. In the far distance of the wide square, various spaceships are parked. Get off the ship. I saw a man in uniform leading a patrol team over. When he noticed Bart, Tina, and Alfred in casual t-shirts, the leader holding a glass cube immediately turned pale. After a change, he bent down respectfully and said respectfully, welcome distinguished guests to Sokka Star. On behalf of the great Gao Tianzun, I offer you the highest respect. I hope that the distinguished guests can spend the happiest time in Sokka in the future. We will greet the guests with the highest attitude and treatment. They. Okay, you seem to be quite polite. Bart nodded in satisfaction. No one likes to look at a cold face. Although the other party doesn't say how pleasing it looks, at least the attitude is good. As for Gao Tianzun, one of the overlords of the universe, was so courteous and humble, Bart knew without even thinking that the other party must have seen the identity of a group of them. After all, the scene of the trial of Thanos can be said to make the whole universe boil. Although Bart and Alfred didn't make a move, which made Tina lose face, but when they were separately hunting Thanos in the universe, they had a lot of trouble with a group of predators, and it was not surprising that they were recognized. This is the smell the Sokka star in the universe, okay, let's take a look around. Bart nodded, and a group of people led them down to the elevator entrance, and followed the elevator all the way to the ground. People are walking on the street, wandering around. Alfred himself doesn't like to join in the fun. Bart is more willing to practice than to join in the fun. But whoever let Tina, a lively girl, pass by this galaxy, insists on taking a look, then Bart and Alfred can what to do. Naturally I want to satisfy my baby sister. But the Thor brothers and the Guardians of the Galaxy were idle and bored to play with them. Needless to say the former, the latter is because of Gamera's emotional instability 5.0, Quill is paying attention to play to let Gamera relax. The science and technology here on Sokka is very advanced. But what is surprising is that the buildings on both sides of the city streets below are not as clean and tidy as they appear in the high-tech world. On the contrary, it is a bit messy and dirty. Various races shuttle back and forth on the street, and most of them have a slightly barbaric and rough temperament. He even walks above board with a weapon on his shoulders. However, no one was making trouble, instead it seemed strangely harmonious and lively. However, Tina seems to enjoy watching this alien style. I even found out that there seemed to be a wonderful championship duel at night, and I was going to take a good look at it.